Hello and welcome to today's discussion of 2026 Ag Structure Property Tax Assessment. My name is Ryan Hoff. For those of you who I haven't met before, I am the Senior Director of Public Policy for Indiana Farm Bureau. With me today is a longtime friend and colleague, the Allen County Assessor, Stacey O'Day. Thank you for being with us today, Stacey.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, Ryan.
And of course, we are sending this video out because we've heard from several of our members about rapid increases in 2026 assessment for ag structures. And so we wanted to provide some background on why have property tax assessments spiked for these structures. You would have received them in the mail in Form 11. And then what can happen now that you've received this property tax assessment on your structures. And there's a lot of discussion to be had there. So I wanted to walk through these, and then we'll chat with Stacey for a little bit about how county assessors view all of this as well. So your 2026 notice of assessment, that's the assessment for this year that will be part of next year's property tax bill. As I mentioned, spiked in values in several counties around the state. And I've provided here a couple examples for you of member feedback that we've received. 54%, 60%. One taxpayer even sent in their Form 11 that showed almost 170% increase in their assessed value on their ag structures. So it can be considerable, and of course adds to your farm buildings at a time where the farm economy is really struggling and farmers really cannot afford more tax burden being placed on them. So why did assessed values increase? Well, first of all, assessed values are determined by the county assessors, who are required to calculate the replacement cost minus depreciation for structures according to cost tables that are established by the state. And since the pandemic, there of course has been a rapid rise in construction related costs, which in turn increase the cost tables that are adopted by the state, because they reflect what is going on in the marketplace for the cost of all of the inputs into construction. Now, these same cost tables have also increased the AV on other types of buildings. So this isn't just something that ag buildings are experiencing, but any type of construction, including homes, apartment buildings, and commercial buildings. But unlike other buildings, there's no data in which assessors can trend these values to the market value in use, which is the basis for your taxable assessed value. And so other considerations can and should be looked at. So what are some of those things? You've received an increase, now what? First of all, talk to your county assessor. They should be able to explain your assessment to you and help you reach the appropriate assessment for your buildings. Assessors can and should be applying appropriate depreciation values reflecting current use and condition of the buildings. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the items in this list is physical condition, and that closely relates to the age of the property, which is part of the cost tables and should be reflected in your assessment that you received. However, other things such as economic obsolescence or change in use may not be figured in. So talk to your county assessor, make sure that they understand what is going on within your operation in relation to the use of your structures. For example, you may own a barn that once upon a time you used part of it as a milking parlor, but it's no longer being used as a milking parlor. And so change in the use can have a dramatic impact on the value of the structure. So if it's no longer a milking parlor and you're just using it for storage, that's going to have a different use and then a different assigned value. Now, some assessors will want to meet with you prior to you filing an appeal. Some will want to wait until after a formal appeal has been filed, but an informal meeting is required by law before a hearing in front of the Property Tax Assessment Board of Appeals happens as part of the formal appeals process. So reach out to your county assessor, talk with them, explain how your assessment looks, how you use your property. They may want to talk to you before filing an appeal. Now, when you talk to your assessor, assessors are more likely to adjust your valuation if you can point to specific factors related to its value and use, which again is the taxable basis of your property. In other words, is it worth less for some reason than what its reproduction costs would be, minus depreciation? Are you no longer using the structure for its original purpose, like my example with the milking parlor? Is the structure obsolete for its intended use? Does it have a hay loft that's not really used for modern agriculture? You're not using it that way. How old is the structure? Is depreciation accurately reflected? And is the building correctly identified on your property record card? Make sure that you understand what all the shorthand terminology is on your property record card. And this can be part of the conversation you have with your assessor when you talk with them, going through the property record card, making sure that what you actually own is reflected as part of your property record. Now, if you decide to file a formal appeal, the value will be decided by the Property Tax Assessment Board of Appeals in your county. Any formal appeal must be filed by the June 15th deadline, even if there are previous informal discussions. You can choose to get an appraisal of your property to submit as evidence of the value, but it is not required. Appraisals have a high evidentiary status in front of the Property Tax Board of Appeals, and the county would have to have a counter appraisal to disprove the taxpayer's appraisal if you indeed had one. Beyond the county PETA, there are further levels of appeals, each with varying deadlines that you need to understand if you proceed with those levels. And I've provided a link there, and obviously you can't click on it, but you can jot down in your web browser where to go for that Department of Local Government Finance property tax appeals walkthrough. And of course you can, but do not have to hire a tax consultant to assist with this process. And beyond this year's assessments, Farm Bureau has already begun conversations with Indiana legislators about long-term solutions to rising tax burden from ag buildings. The 2025 tax reforms introduced deductions offered to properties in the 2% class, which includes ag land. For these properties, 1/3 of the assessed value of the property is to be deducted or no longer taxable once the entire reform program is phased in. Farm Bureau is advocating that ag structures be moved from the current 3% property class to the 2% property class, so that ag structures would also receive this 1/3 deduction. A further benefit is that the property tax cap would also be 2% if ag structures were to move to this class. Farm Bureau already has a policy that supports this change, and as you talk to legislators about concerns with ag building valuations, please share and support this policy with them. Now, I provide you with my email address, also for our public policy team. So if you have questions, even after this video, please direct those to me and I will try to answer them for you. Now, want to have Stacey join the conversation. Stacey, you've been an assessor for quite some time, several years, and do you have any first thoughts on the information I've just shared?
Yes, thank you for doing this. First of all, I think there's a lot of questions out there that hopefully we can at least address today and spark the communication, which is very important. We're kind of in a perfect storm right here. We are seeing increase in the cost schedules. As Ryan mentions, those do come from the state of Indiana, the DLGF, the Department of Local Government Finance, who gives us our marching orders, if you will. So what we're seeing here is the state of Indiana gives us the cost tables once every 4 years. We have not had any updated cost tables in 4 years. We've also gone through COVID, as you know. Another underlying mechanism in the calculation here is back in 2011, the DLGF had applied a negative 30% VEM, or what we call verified economic multiplier. because everything is supposed to be at market value, the assessors kind of struggled to get to market value, but the VAM actually kind of reduced the standard cost, which includes labor, materials, and equipment. And as we all know, those things have kind of skyrocketed over the last several years. So you're seeing that take place right now. But what can you do? And again, communication is key. As Ryan mentioned, check your property record card. It is mandatory that all property record cards are online within your county. Take a look at that, get it in hand, give your assessor a call, and go through the details of the structures that you have. It's very detail oriented. As Ryan said, how is that building being used? For example, a T3 or a pole barn has different pricing options depending on, is it a dirt floor? Is it a concrete floor? Does it have electricity? Are there stall walls? There's lots of tiny details that go into the total square foot price. So working with your assessor and making sure the data is accurate is imperative, and we need you to do that. The cost tables, actually, the state gave them to our software vendors the last week of December, and then the software vendors had to get that information into our database, and then the assessors actually received it mid-January. So this information is fairly new to us as it is to you as well. And we are just now seeing the results of taking the market data and the cost schedules, putting them together. When we do a ratio study, we actually had about 2.5 weeks by the time we received the cost tables till we had to actually send our finished product, our new assessed values, down to the state of Indiana in the form of a ratio study to be approved. So the time right now is crucial to get feedback from you, from everybody, to see if there's something that's not on the mark or something's too high. We do have time to address that. Communication is key. Get a hold of your assessor, talk about the details of your property record card, have them explain in detail, how is this particular barn being priced? Some of it's on the property record card, but some of the details like stall walls and concrete floor may not be visibly there. So communication is key. Get a hold of them. Most assessors are willing to come out to your property. Some of it can be done over the phone, just depending on everybody's schedule. We're happy to do that. The biggest increases we're seeing are like duck and turkey barns, and those are very large facilities. They're very detailed facilities. They're climate controlled. They have ventilation, concrete floors, feeders, waters, steel frame buildings. They're very costly. We've been looking into that since, we've kind of had a spotlight on, we're getting the feedback too. So we're digging in deep to see, do these cost tables actually reach what it costs to build them out in the public? We're looking at building permit costs right now and looking to see how far off the cost tables are to new construction. So if you have any information, if you've recently built something that we can take a look at to compare real data to the data that we receive from the state, that would be very valuable information for everybody. Location multipliers are actually a little bit different for each county too, and it's kind of based off of Marion, and then it goes out from there. The Craftsman cost tables that we use kind of centralize in Indiana, and then are adjusted by what we call a location cost multiplier throughout the state of Indiana, meaning are the labor costs, material costs, equipment costs the same for Allen County as it is in Marion? It's actually not. And each county has its own location multiplier, so it's going to vary a little bit county by county. And that's a positive thing. Most of them are under 1. For example, Allen County, my building cost and labor is at 0.96% of what Marion County is. So mine's going to be a little bit less than what's happening in Marion, and that's dispersed differently throughout the state of Indiana. So it's important to take a look at those things.
And now that it's already the first week of May, the June 15th deadline for filing an appeal isn't too very far off. Different counties, as I mentioned, will have a different approach to how they handle the formal appeals. As I mentioned, some will want to have a meeting before a formal appeal is filed. Can you talk through some of the differences in how different assessors may approach that process?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the, well, we have to have preliminary meetings, informal meetings. 90% of the issues that we get on tax appeals or phone calls can be handled on a one-on-one conversation. It's a very small percent, probably 10% that actually even go on to the Property Tax Assessment Board of Appeals. It's not an intimidating situation, one-on-one. I think most assessors are willing to sit down. We want the assessments to be fair and accurate. We don't want anybody paying more than they should be paying. But we only know the basics. So detail oriented is going to come from you. And if, let's say you experience tornado damage or excessive depreciation that is different from the norm, those are the types of things that can be adjusted to your structure to maybe change the value of that building. And we only come out to your property once every 4 years. We have a cyclical reassessment that happens. But if you're not in that, year 1, 2, or 3, or 4 of that cycle, it might have been a while since we've physically been to your property. So all those factors play in networking with your community and making sure that everything is accurate.
And I know you're one of the officers with the statewide County Assessors Association. What is the county association doing to make sure that every assessor throughout the 92 counties is kind of on the same page with what's going on with these ag buildings?
That's a good point. We have a very strong network in communicating. And when the cost tables came out, there was a lot of email back and forth. What are you doing? What are you doing? We try to work together closely on these things. And because the feedback is coming in now, again, we didn't have the information until, we had to apply it and send it to the state. And we're seeing the results as you are playing out right now. So we are networking and gathering data to see from all different lights of counties to see if it's accurate or not. We're going to compile this information. We're sharing it with other local assessors, and we're going to make sure that we can answer some of the common questions like a Q&A. We're trying to put together some information so all assessors are going to have this information in their hand. Just preparing for this conversation today, I learned a lot of the details that, unless you study this constantly to figure out what these prices are, it's not something that's readily available. And we're working on those details to try to get everybody some good answers.
Fantastic. That's encouraging that the assessors are also keeping an eye on this and are working together to make sure that all assessors are aware of the problem and aware of tools that can be used or should be used to help taxpayers way through not only the process but reaching the assessment as it should be.
Yeah.
So.
And another, if I could add a few positive things in there too, for those of you who may or may not know, there is a heritage barn deduction out there. So if you have a mortise and tenon building built prior to 1950, there's an application for that you fill out. You can get it online, or the assessor can send it to you. And that's 100% deduction on that particular structure if it's built before 1950 and it's a mortise and tenon type building. So that's a positive. Another thing we're seeing right now that the legislature has done recently is the $2 million exemption, for example. I took a look at my data today. I have 312 registered farm numbers in Allen County. I have 10,000 farms, but 312 are registered as farmers. 96% of those qualify for the under $2 million exemption. So it's crucial that you're making
personal property.
A business personal property, but on your farms that you're going to, these are farms that are qualifying. I had 96% of my farms would qualify for this under $2 million exemption. So make sure that you're working with your assessor, checking the box on your 104 forms to make sure that you qualify. We can help you with that. Another thing that the legislature kind of tried to balance out is a new deduction for anything that's in the 2% bucket. This year it was additional 6% that you were able to apply to, especially to your land value. So example, if you have $100,000 worth of farmland that's currently in the 2% bucket, you got an additional $6,000 off, or 6%. And that's going to be a graduated increase up until 2031. I think, Brian, help me out if I'm off
Yes,
a
that's
day there.
correct.
And then it would graduate at 6% now, going up to 33.4%, where it's going to stay at that level. So there are some positive things out there that you can do to help yourself as well.
Yeah, and of course, that deduction currently is available for ag land, which is in the 2% bucket, while ag buildings are in the 3% bucket. As a policy matter, we at Farm Bureau are going to be advocating with the legislature to move farm buildings into the 2% bucket of property, so that they are also eligible for that 1/3 deduction. Stacey, want to thank you very much for being with us today to talk through this issue. Of course, we'll be ongoing at least for the next month or so before the formal appeals deadline, but even going into next year at the legislature, this will be a topic of discussion. But for today, I want to thank you for joining us and for your partnership over the years. And again, I've provided my email address for our members who want to know more information about this. And of course, we can be in contact with the Assessors Association as well. So thank you very much, Stacey. Look forward to working with you again soon.
Thank you for the opportunity.